Hi everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Linda. I am an MBA student at ITB, and now I will present to you about our topic. It's very interesting topic. It's called energy that drives the world. Because maybe it's not more than just a phrase, because fuel or energy it reflects how every part of our life depends on the energy, especially in fuel of course. In Indonesia, where millions still rely on subsidized fuel, energy isn't just about power, it's about access, affordability, and kind of survival. And when fuel price go up, it doesn't just affect the economy, but it will change the habits and the way families will live. Like it changes how they cook, how they move, how much they will spend their money, and what they sacrifice. That's why today I will talk about something simple but more powerful. How change in fuel price are reshaping household energy consumption, especially in Indonesia. Let's move to the first slide. Okay, now before we jump into the data and analysis, maybe let's start with why this topic matters. First one is about BBM. BBM or fuel is essential but heavily subsidized in Indonesia. Fuel is something almost every Indonesian uses daily, whether for cooking, for delivery service, for motorbike. It's a basic needs. That's why the government keeps the price low through the subsidies. But we have a problem here because the cost of these subsidies is enormous. In 2022, our government spent about 500 trillion rupiah just for subsidies. It's more than the government spent for the healthy or the education. And then the second one, we will talk about the tidak meratanya atau it's not spread everywhere and equality, the subsidies. The richer just got a lot more. And what's more concerning is that subsidies are enjoyed by the richer household because they consume more fuel. Meanwhile, poor households who are more vulnerable to price changes end up getting less benefit and less impact. And the effect is real. Inflation, protests, and the consumption will be low. When the government raises price like 2015 or 2022, there will always be pushback. We've seen protests, rising inflation, and cuts in household consumption, especially for low-income family. Yes, the fuel is very impactful for them. Fuel price, especially. And so the big question is, how do we fix this? How do we make fuel pricing more fair, more sustainable, and less painful for the people who are already struggling? Okay, let's explore to the next presentation. After seeing the background and how energy connects to everyday life, let's explain what this presentation actually trying to explore. First one is we have to understand that the household behavior. Like um, we have to understand how household respond when fuel price change. Do they reduce the consumption, or they just simply absorb the cut of the cost from the other needs? And we will take a look with the behavioral side. And the second one, we will analyze the bigger economic picture. I want to look beyond the household into how this response affect the broader economy. Things like inflation, change in demand, and how subsidies strain the national budget. And the third one, we will explore smarter policy option. Of course, we will give the recommendation what is the better policy that before, and what is the fairer, more efficient, and more sustainable. Because it's not just about cutting costs; it's about helping the right people and preparing for a better future. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Okay, to understand how fuel price change affect households and the economy, we need to look at the few economic theories. Okay, the first one is price elasticity of demand. About the elasticity, this theory is all about how people respond when price change. In the case of fuel, richer households usually keep buying the same amount no matter what. They don't care about the price because they can afford it. But how about the poorer household? They react really fast. They will react because when the price go up, the cut down fuel use. They will not a lot of fuel use. and maybe they will cut back even the daily needs. That's what elasticity shows us. Some groups are way more sensitive to price change than the others. Now, the second one, we talk about the aggregate demand and supply. We look at how the whole economy reacts. This is where aggregate demand and supply come in. When fuel prices go up, people have less money to spend on other stuff, so demands drop. The shifts are aggregate demand curve to the left. On the supply side, business face higher costs, especially in the transport and production, so they might produce less. That shift in the short run aggregate supply. And when both AD and SRAS shift like that, you get a classic case of cost push inflation and slower growth. The third one, we talk about the Keynesian fiscal policy, of course. When we have the Keynesian theory, which basically says, hey, when the economy is under pressure, the government should step in. And that's what happened in 2022. When fuel price rose, the government gave out cash transfer like BLT BBM atau bantuan langsung tunai. That's a classic Keynesian move. Use fiscal tools to help people keep spending so the economy doesn't freeze up. And the fourth one is public choice. Finally, let's not forget about politics. Public choice theory reminds us that economic policy isn't just about numbers, but it's also about public opinion and political pressure. Fuel prices are super sensitive. Governments often delay reforms because they are afraid of backlash or protest. But when we understand this theory, we realize that part of good policy is also about managing public trust and expectation. Okay, let's next to the another slide. Now we will talk about the data and trends. Okay, what's really happening with fuel subsidies and how people are reacting, especially in Indonesia? Like we can see here that fuel subsidies are still huge. Even though we say we've reformed fuel pricing, in reality, subsidy is really still massive. Like in 2022, Indonesia spent over 500 trillion on energy subsidies. That's more than we spent on health and education, like I mentioned before. It shows how much pressure global oil price put on our national budget. And the second one, who really benefits from the subsidies? If we break down the numbers, something becomes clear. Richer households actually get more benefit from subsidies because they consume more fuel, like I mentioned before too. And but the poorer will be hit hard, and they will hit their income. And the third one, people adjust their behavior because of this kind of fuel prices. How do people respond when prices go up? They change their habit. Based on the study from INDEF, low-income households reduced their fuels use by 8.2%, while higher income groups only cut back around 2.9%. That's a big gap. Some people switch to LPG, travel less, or cutting spending food and essential just to cope. For one, we talk about the rural areas have fewer option because people in the rural area feel more tougher because they will not get a lot of choice. Those options are limited. Some families will going back to firewood, which is less clean and more time consuming. So overall, the data shows that fuel subsidies are expensive, poorly targeted, and unfair. The people who suffer most from price increase are not the ones getting the most help. That's a big policy problem, of course. Now, this is why understanding the data is so important. It shows us where the system is broken and who's getting left behind. Okay, let's go to the next slide. We will talk about the case study now. And to really understand how fuel pricing reforms affect people and what works or doesn't, let's take a look at some real world case, starting with Indonesia, and then we will compare it to few other countries. First, in Indonesia, let's say like the protest tell the story. In 2025, again in and it happens again in 2022, the Indonesian government raises fuel price. And every time there were major protests, of course, people didn't just complain, they took to the streets. Because fuel price hikes hit low income groups to the hardest, and they weren't prepared for it because it just like immediately. According to the study by INDEF, after the 2022 hike, low income households reduced their fuel usage by 8.2%, right? So this will tell us that poor families are far more vulnerable. The second one, we go to the next country is Ghana. Ghana uses the gradual reform and cash transfers. Ghana handled it better. Instead of cutting subsidies suddenly, they did slowly and they gave people cash transfer at the same time. That will help reduce resistance and give poor families a safety net. They're not just shocked because we already give the cash as a good example of reform done right, step by step, and don't forget the support. The third one is Iran. Iran, on the other hand, removed subsidies suddenly with very little preparation. And what happened? Of course, massive protests and skyrocketing inflation. This show that even if the economics make sense, the politics and timing really matters. Reform without preparation can be backfire hard. The fourth one, we're going to the Philippines. Philippines will get the smart targeting. Philippines did something smarter. They moved from universal subsidies to targeted ones, focusing on groups like public transportation drivers, low-income families. They made it very specific. That made the system more efficient and fairer, and it helped them avoid huge protests. And about these four countries, we can learn that fuel subsidies reforms don't work if they're rushed or unclear. But if they're fast, well targeted, communicated clearly, step by step with support, they can actually improve the economy and protect the poor one at the same time. Okay, now how about the macroeconomic impact? Maybe we will discuss like the inflation still happens, right? We get the inflation, especially when costs push inflation. That's when prices go up not because people are buying more, but because it costs more to produce and deliver goods. Why? Because transportation and logistics get more expensive when fuel is pricey. And the second one, the people will spend less. Then there is a consumption. When fuel is expensive, people, especially in the lower income, will spend and consume less. They have to cut back. They have to use the less fuel, maybe skip traveling or reduce spending on other essentials. This drop in demand pulls down economic activity overall. And the third one is growth slows down. Less spending means slower economic growth in the short run. Business sells less, production slows, and job creation might even be affected. So we feel it on national level. And the trade balance. The trade balance might be improved a little. Here's a small silver lining. When fuel consumption drops, so do the fuel imports. That actually helps our trade balance, but only in the short term. It's not enough to cancel out the downsides. And we talk about the fiscal pressure gets worse, of course. The fiscal side. The government spent a huge chunk to its budget on fuel subsidies. That means less money for schools, hospital, or infrastructure. So even if subsidies feel good in the moment, but for the long term is very limited on the long term progress. And in summary, higher fuel prices can lead to inflation, reduce consumption, and slow growth unless we manage it well. That's why fuel pricing policy needs to super strategic and balanced. Okay, now let's move to the fresh policy ideas that go beyond what we've already seen in Indonesia, I hope. These are not just about cutting subsidies, but about making the system smarter, fairer, and more sustainable. Okay, we try with the adaptive subsidy system. First, imagine if subsidies could adjust automatically. When global oil price rise or poverty increase, the system respond by giving more support. And when things stabilize, subsidies can shrink again. This help prevent overspending and make sure help is really there when people need it the most. Okay, that's the first one. Now we're going to energy voucher system. Instead of just handing out cash, we can offer energy specific voucher. So families can use them for fuel, LPG, or electricity, but not for unrelated expenses. This makes sure the aid directly supports their basic energy needs and reduces the risk of misuse. Now, public transportation reward program. Another idea is to reward people who choose public transportation, then they use their own car. We could give discounts, loyalty points, or even cashback for frequent riders. This not only saves fuel but also encourages the greener travel and help cut down emissions in city. And community-based energy transition. On a bigger scale, we can help entire communities shift to renewable energy like biogas or solar panels, or like nowadays like EV car. By doing it at the community level, it lowers costs for each household and builds a sense of cooperation around sustainability. And the last one is fuel price communication platform. Remember that transparency is really matters in fuel prices. A digital platform that explains the real-time fuel price breakdown showing global price taxes and subsidies because it can help people to understand more why the price should change. When the public understand the why, they are more likely to accept the change and the government will build the trust. So, these recommendations are not just about the economics, but about protecting the vulnerable groups, promoting cleaner energy, and making sure that people informed and included in the process. If we get this right, fuel reform can become a stepping stone toward a fairer and greener future. Okay, so to wrap everything up, here's what we've seen throughout this kind of conversation. Yeah, the first one is fuel price will affect everything, of course. Fuel price change then just affect gas station, but affect household, government budgets, and even the whole economy. And those impacts are especially heavy on low income families. And the second one, the current subsidy system isn't working. Right now, our fuel subsidies are expensive and most of the benefits goes to people who don't really need it. Meanwhile, poorer families are the ones who suffer the most when prices go up. That's just not fair. The third one, reform is necessary but must be smart. We've seen from Indonesian own experience and from countries like Ghana, Iran, and Philippines that fuel reforms can work but only if they're done gradually with good communication, good support for those who need it. And the fourth one, the opportunity for change. Fuel reform isn't just about saving money, it's a chance to redirect resources into the better things like public transportation, clean energy, or education. It's a moment to build a stronger, more sustainably economy. And in the end, the goal isn't just to raise or lower fuel prices, it's to build a system that's fair, future ready, and leaves no one behind. Okay. I think that's all for the presentation. Thank you for you guys to staying here and being part of this journey. But I want to say that like fuel reform isn't just about the numbers; it's about people, and the right approach can help us move forward together. I think that's all for this presentation. Thank you for still keep here with me, and hope to see you soon to another video. Bye. See you.